Hello students, how are you? I hope you all are fit and fine. So as you all know that revision is going on and in my last video I revised your two chapters and also notice writing. So now today in this video we are going to revise the poem which will be coming in your the next revision test. Okay, so let us begin. Dear students, now we are going to revise part 4 of revision test 3. Chapter 3, Deep Water, written by William Douglas. Introduction. William Douglas 1898 to 1980 was born in Maine, Minnesota. After graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in English and Economics, he spent 2 years teaching at a high school in Yakima. He was an advisor and a friend to President Roosevelt. Douglas was a leading advocate of individual rights. He retired in 1975 with a term lasting 36 years and remained for a time the longest period service justice in the history of the court. Deep Water has been taken from his book of Men and Mountains. It was his personal experience. It reveals how, as a young boy, William Douglas nearly drowned in a swimming pool. In this extract, he talks about his fear of water and thereafter how he finally overcame it. Now, summary. Douglas was about 4 years old. He visited a beach with his father, then stood in the surf. A powerful wave swept him and knocked him down. He was terrified. He had avoided water since then. When Douglas was about 11 years old, he had a desire to learn swimming. The Yakima River was treacherous. Many people had drowned in it. His mother advised him never to try to swim in it, but the YMCA pool was safe. It was only 2 to 3 feet deep and its shallow end. The other end was about 9 feet deep and the drop was gradual. Douglas decided to learn swimming there. He bought a pair of water wings and went to the pool. He paddled with water wings. He imitated others. One day, he was sitting all alone on the edge of the pool. A well-built man came there. He looked at skinny Douglas and out of mirth picked him up and tossed him into the deepest part of the pool. Douglas hit the water surface in a sitting position and began to sink to the bottom slowly. Douglas was terrified, but he could not think of a plan to save himself. He decided to spring from the bottom of the pool as soon as his toes touched it. He hoped he would pop like a cork to the surface. Then he would lie flat and paddle to the edge of the pool. As soon as his toes touched the tiled floor of the pool, Douglas bounced with all his strength, but he did not rise quickly. He came up slowly. He opened his eyes. He could see only water. He grew panicky. He was suffocating. He tried to shout, but there was no sound. Finally, his eyes and nose came out of water. He beat his arms. He tried to raise his legs, but they hung like dead weights. He felt something was pulling him downward again. Once again, he slipped downwards. He had spent all his energy. His lungs ached and his head throbbed. He was getting dizzy. Fortunately, he could remember his strategy. Once again, he sprang from the bottom of the pool. He was paralyzed, stiff and rigid. But when he jumped, he could see only water around him. Then suddenly, he reached the surface. His eyes and nose came out of water, but he began to go down once again. Once again, he began to drift downwards. He could make no effort. He was relaxed. There was no fear. There was no panic. It was all quiet and peaceful. He felt as if he were floating in space. He was unconscious. When Douglas regained his consciousness, he realized that he had been saved. He was laying on his stomach. He was vomiting. He heard voices. Someone said he had nearly died. The young man who had thrown him into the pool said that he had done it out of fun. After some time, Douglas went home. When he was weak and trembling, the dreadful experience haunted him again and again. A few years later, he went to the waters of Cascades. He wished to wade into them. The terror seized him again. His legs were paralyzed. Whenever and Wherever he went, fishing, canoeing, bathing, and swimming, he was seized with terror. The joy of living was lost. Finally, Douglas decided to get an instructor to help him overcome his fear of water. The instructor helped him bit by bit, piece by piece. First, he put a belt round Douglas and attached the belt with a rope. He held the end of the rope as they moved up and down the pool. He made Douglas put his face under the water, underwater, and exhale. He held Douglas on the side of the pool and made him kick with legs. He was with Douglas for about 6 months. When he felt that Douglas was able to swim alone, he left. Though Douglas was able to swim and the length of the pool up and down, he was not sure that the old fear had left him completely. He, however, was prepared to overcome it if it reappeared. Then he went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire. He dived off a dock at Triggs Island. He swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. He used all the strokes he knew. Only once did the terror return, but Douglas was able to overcome it at once. He still wanted to test himself. So Douglas went to Warm Lake. There he swam across the other shore and back. Terror did not reappear. Douglas gave out a cry of victory. His terror of water and his conquest of it gave him an insight into the meaning of life and death. He had experienced the fear of death as well as the sensation of dying. He felt there is peace in death, so he lived more intensely. He enjoyed life. The title Deep Water signifies the depth of the struggles borne by protagonist William Douglas to overcome his fear of water. This text is Douglas' display of exemplary courage, resilience, and determination to emerge victorious. So it's all about the lesson. Now let us go through the poem Keeping Quiet. After that we will discuss the questions which have been asked in last 10 years question papers. So now let us revise the poem Keeping Quiet, which is also the part of your revision test 3 part 3 syllabus. Okay, so let us begin. Keeping Quiet, written by Pablo Neruda. Introduction. Pablo Neruda, 1904 to 1973, is the pen name of Neftali Ricardo Reyes Basalto, who was born in a town of Parral in Chile. Neruda's poems are full of easily understood images which make them no less beautiful. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 1971. In this poem, he talks about a strange, striking theme. It is basically an anti-war poem. The poet is deeply concerned about violence, cruelty to animals, and the plight of the manual workers. Here, the poet offers a very simple solution to many of your problems. The solution is self-introspection and creating a feeling of mutual understanding among human beings. Let us go through the summary of the poem. The poet invites people all over to come together and suspend their activities till he counts to 12. He wants us to keep quiet and do nothing. It would be a rare moment in the history of mankind. Fishermen will not harm whales. There will be no preparation of war. There will be no harm to the environment. However, the poet makes one thing clear. He wants us to suspend activities but not to stop them forever. Because life is meant for action and progress, and inactivity means death. However, he hopes the moments of introspection will help us to move in the right direction only if we stop and think. Now, I'm going to explain it stanza wise, as already the explanation has been done, even though once again I'm showing the whole explanation on the screen too. Let us go through this note too. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. The poet Pablo Neruda asks each one of us to count it till 12 and then not do anything. Whether it is talking or moving, he wants everyone to keep quiet and not move at all. In this moment of silence, he wants that we should not speak in any language and not move even our arms. It is in fact at the number 12 when both the hands of the clock unite. Therefore, he wants us also to unite like two hands of the clock. Poetic devices used in this poem: alliteration, stop for 1 second, repetition of S. Pun, word having dual meaning in the same line. Not move our arms so much. So arms, parts of body, and weapons used for destruction. So this is pun 2. Stanza 2. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. So the moment when everyone would be quiet would be an exciting and thrilling moment. There will be no rushing of everyday work, no sound of machines polluting the environment. It will be a moment when everyone would be together, but in a strange kind of way. Poetic devices used in this stanza: repetition. The word without has been repeated. Alliteration, that is sudden strangeness, repetition of S. Stanza 3. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hot hands. The fishermen would also stop for some time and not kill whales. Fishermen in these lines represent the tyrants or killers who do not think about others and carry on with their act of killing. They will also stop and introspect the selfish acts that they are doing. The salt gatherers would also stop gathering salt and would get time for introspection, which they never get in the rat race of earning their livelihood. In this strange moment, everyone will stop doing the kind of work that they are doing and realize their mistakes. When they get time to introspect, the man gathering salt represents the lower section of society, which is ready to descend to any level in order to earn a living and often end up hurting themselves. Besides, humans have tendency to procure more and more, that is gathering salt, for which he want only depleting natural resources. He does not know that he is harming nature at the cost of his own life. Poetic device used in this line, poetic devices used in this stanza: alliteration, would look at his hurt hands, repetition of H. Symbolism, the fishermen symbolize man's indiscriminate exploitation of nature for his vested interests, and salt stands for materialistic possessions. Hot hands are symbolic of human suffering. Now, next stanza. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk above with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. The poet is now referring to the creator of pollution, those who prepare green war, chemical wars, wars with gas and nuclear wars, wars with fire. He wants them also to stop and think over what harm they are doing. They should stop their brutal work and think positive. These wars would bring only destruction, and there would be no survivors to enjoy their victory. They should clean their soul of negativity and join hands with other fellow beings. They would also leave the path of destruction for that one moment, with everyone would remain quiet. Repetition. Poetic devices used in the poem. Repetition, wars with gas, wars with fire. Alliteration, would put on clean clothes. Okay, so repetition of C here, that is why alliteration, and here the word wars repeated, that is why it is repetition. Now last stanza. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. The poet then moves on to say that he doesn't want that keeping quiet should be taken as total inactivity, because we can never remain inactive. We may be inactive physically, but we can never be inactive mentally, as we all be introspecting. The poet does not believe in inactivity. Life is an ongoing process. So, he does not want to associate it with death or bring it to a dead end. Moreover, man is single-mindedly rushing for scientific progress and advancement. He has so focused himself that he pays no heed to the pros and cons of reckless progress and moves ahead without reflecting on the consequences. The expression is a comment on the modern men's mechanized and busy life. Life, no doubt, is an ongoing process, but in the name of progress, man is treading the path of destruction. He is trapped in a rat race of mad competition. He knows no rest, no peace. Man, in his race towards materialism, has sacrificed and fulfillment of his emotional needs and has thus become sad and isolated. Besides the increasing arms race and man's rapid advancement towards progress at the cost of nature has brought him on the verge of extinction. Last stanza. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I'll go. We must try to learn something from the earth. In the winter season, the earth seems to be still and quiet, but something goes on beneath its surface. Where seeds are laying hidden, they come up in spring and teach us to do our work quietly. Introspecting can be done easily while keeping quiet. It will also help us to regaining our lost vitality and energize us to do our work. The poet finally starts counting up to 12 and tells others to keep quiet. So dear students, thus we have finished these chapters which will be coming in the next revision test. Questions and their answers will be discussed in the next video. So thank you students for watching this video. See you tomorrow.